welcome to Day Home Divas. I'm Joanne.
I'm Cash.
And I'm Sophia.
This episode, we chat with Crystal Churcher, the co-chair of ACE National, a Canadian coalition of childcare operators. Welcome, Crystal, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So you started Start Learning Center in 2014. What made you decide to open a daycare?
We had moved to Fort McMurray from BC, and I have a background in behavior intervention. So I was looking at kind of different options for my daughter at the time in Fort Mac, and there just wasn't a lot of place. I mean, Fort Mac has definitely grown and childcare has evolved there in the last 10 years, but this time there wasn't a lot of, say, inclusive and, kind of unique programming to support children with social emotional learning, which is kind of my background. And so I kind of thought, this might be something that I could bring to the community. And we started it in our house. We converted our basement into a day home, actually, like a preschool-based kind of in-house preschool, I guess. And from there, yeah, it's grown. So we have 124 families in our center right now. It's a preschool, not really a daycare. We're renting under a preschool license, so just a little different. But yeah, I just really wanted to bring something to the community that supported families up there and supported children.
Excellent.
How did you go from owning a daycare center to becoming co-chair of ACE?
I moved to Calgary just kind of at the tail end of COVID. And I was actually planning on opening up another early start center in Calgary. This is just at the very beginning of the $10 a day program. So I had just signed my center into the program, and I was about to sign a lease in Southeast Calgary for a new space. And I was really trying to get information on whether or not I would be able to access wage top-ups, subsidy, $10 a day affordability grants for my new spaces in this center. And I absolutely could not get a straightforward yes or no from any level of government at that time. So I backed out of the lease. I was not comfortable putting my house and assets on something I couldn't understand what the regulations and rules were going to be. And from there, I started to kind of dig deeper a little bit into what I had actually signed under a $10 a day agreement and what kind of the restrictions and impact was on my private business. And it wasn't good at that time. I was really upset with what I hadn't really understood was in all the fine print of that agreement. I joined a WhatsApp chat of childcare operators from across the province. There was about 400 of us on this chat, and found that I wasn't really alone in my frustration and confusion with this agreement. Nobody seemed to have any answers or willingness to even talk to operators at that point. We were just kind of told this was a good thing, and we were doing what we needed to do to support families. And so we decided, there was 5 of us from across the province, to start an association that represented operators and really advocated for, at that time, for for-profit operators, because we were left out of this agreement, not just in Alberta, but across the country. So from that, ACE has grown from being just for-profit operators to all forms of operators now. We represent profit. We do represent day home educators and some agencies as well. And then in August, we grew nationally. So we have grown with provincial chapters across the country, and we represent like 160,000 licensed childcare spaces across Canada now. So it was really just, I felt like I was left out of understanding this program, and the associations I belonged to as a childcare operator didn't really represent me at all during that time. And I felt like we needed that for operators of all kinds to have that community, because there's more than just the education side to childcare. There's the whole operational side, and there's definitely a big gap there. So that's a really long answer to that question.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's fair.
But was it difficult then to get parts of the government to listen to you so that you could advocate for the childcare providers?
Definitely been a journey. I'm not really someone who had a lot of or any political understanding prior to this. So it's been kind of a political boot camp for me over the last 3 years to learn how different levels of government work. Yeah, definitely. I think it's taken a lot of consistency and just constant, questioning and not being okay with just being told that this is how it is and you should just be happy with this because it sounds great, right?
Yeah.
Our association has been one that I think just keeps asking questions. Like we should have the ability to ask questions. We are massive stakeholders in childcare as operators and parents, and we've been completely ignored under this program. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's definitely not easy even still. I mean, there's a lot of, you Googled me, I'm sure you saw it. There's a lot of associations that don't appreciate our questions and maybe a little bit of a shift in some of the mentality and ideology that's been so prevalent in childcare. So yeah, I like to think that we're bringing a different focus and kind of shifting some stale narratives that have been there for decades. So
Can you just tell us a little bit about ACE, like how it runs and how you help everybody?
sure. So ACE is a nonprofit association. We're fully registered as an association across the country. We provide a community for childcare operators, like I was mentioning, but we also provide, benefits for your employees. We're the only place that if you're a nonprofit or a day home, you can actually get access to CFIB, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with CFIB, but it's the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. And through them, you can have access to legal representation, HR representation, questions about administration. If you have, a WCB planter and you don't know what you're supposed to do, you can call them and get an instant, real person on the line to ask those questions and get representation that you can't really on your own. They do a ton of professional development around like business management and administration and different things. So we brought that in, as a partnership to our association because we found that a lot of people in childcare, including myself, had no business background, really don't understand the numbers of running a business, which regardless if you're for-profit or nonprofit, your center has to be viable. The numbers have to make sense, right? So
Exactly.
we wanted to bring that support to operators and, having access to free legal advice is critical when you're working with people. So yeah, we provide that full package of benefits, as well as, we do provide lots of lunch and learns and webinars and different things around anything to do with childcare on the operational side. So if there's a new agreement and you're not understanding it, we will definitely have different lunch and learns and webinars to support operators and parents. Because again, we find that our operators across the country and in Alberta, a lot are English second language. These contracts are very difficult to understand, and to try and communicate that to your parents is not easy, especially if people are frustrated with it or there's been a big shift. So we like to be the buffer for them and take on those tough questions too. So
It's very important anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with helping those that their English isn't their first language. That's definitely nice that you guys are able to help them understand the contracts and stuff. According to your website, ACE National Coalition of Childcare Operators is leading the change to shift from federally controlled funding to no strings attached childcare funding for the provinces. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Sure. So federally, what we've always been advocating for is to see this funding go to parents. We don't want it funneling through our bank accounts as operators. We believe that parents have a choice and should be an active participant in their child's care. It shouldn't be a government telling you that you can access this program at one type of childcare and that's it. We want to see that spread across, multiple platforms of childcare for families to have a choice. We want to see the money go back to provinces. So we're not asking for more funding. While we would love to see more money coming into this program because it's not properly funded, we also realize that it's a lot on taxpayers already. And we have some questions around how we would fund it long term, but we want to see it go back to provinces. I mean, childcare is provincially, under provincial jurisdiction. Right now, we have the federal government who's funding this program. Then it goes to the provinces. And now that we have two levels of government kind of intertwined in our child care systems. It's not been working well in the last 3 years, and we don't think that the federal government should continue to kind of be attached to our provincial childcare systems. We want to see it like an envelope funding model that goes to the provinces. The provinces have to use it for childcare. We're not asking for a blank check here, but have to use it for childcare, and they can put it back into the systems in the province or revamp the systems if they're not working exactly how they want. And then from there, we would always love to see it go to parents in some way. So, directed subsidy model, or however, the province believes it should go. But yeah, we want the governments out of our childcare centers and out of our kind of business models for this. And we want parents to be able to have kind of free access to different levels of care.
100%. Yeah.
As they should be.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a good point that you bring up about getting the federal government out of the situation, because I feel like every province has its own unique needs when it comes to childcare. So I think one system across the board to every province just is not realistic, right?
No.
So I think getting it back to the provinces, each individual province, for their government to figure out which is best fits their needs. I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even when we look at the last 3-4 years under this program since it rolled out, you can see that the federal government isn't rolling this out in a way that's long-term for families. It's not sustainable. It's actually not meeting the goals that were intended. We can't roll out something and overnight shift a whole national childcare system into a one-size-kind-of-fits-all nonprofit public school model without substantial investment in infrastructure and workforce strategy. And then you have to look at, like you said, all the different types of childcare systems in each province. When you have provinces like Alberta, where 70% of your childcare spaces are held in for-profit private centers, you can't just roll out a system overnight that doesn't support those childcare centers. I mean, how do you shift that dependency in the system to a nonprofit model without years of infrastructure and planning and kind of transitioning, right? And it's been a mess. I mean, we have wait lists that are thousands long across the country, and families can't access these spaces. And if they can get a space, it maybe isn't even in a center that they would have chosen for their child. They're just having to take whatever they can get. So it's definitely not working in the best interests of families and children right now.
Exactly. With doing research for the podcast, I've been noticing that a lot of the new centers that are opening up are from, I'm trying to think how to word this correctly, people that have immigrated to Canada, and they're the ones opening up the centers, but they don't seem to have a good understanding of our policies here and how our standards of care, we treat children type thing. So have you noticed an influx of that also?
I guess one of the things I have brought forward almost in every meeting I've had with the provincial government is the fact that, again, we are putting our focus on a quota-based model of childcare and not a quality-based model of childcare across the country. But in Alberta specifically, we've created 30,000 new childcare spaces in the last year here. And that sounds lovely, but there is zero support for those operators. There's nothing. I mean, if you have tried to open a childcare center in the last year, you get a 1-800 number to call for Childcare Connect, which, again, the intentions of that system are great, but you're rolling out systems in real time without understanding the childcare system and the infrastructure behind it and all of the different dynamics that are in place. And it's not working well. And it's going to be, I think, decades before we clean up this mess in Alberta or across Canada. I mean, I could go on for days about this. I think there's so many flaws in this program, but, I have sat through thousands of meetings with different government levels and officials, and I don't know if I've had one where somebody brought up children in any of this. And I think that is just such a horrible way to roll out a program when their children aren't at the center of it. And I think that when you are creating spaces, because numbers are what gets you more funding from your contract with the federal government, your priority is based on meeting those targets, like sales targets, and you're not looking at the children that are actually sitting in those spaces. And I think we have some major issues with that. I mean, we could talk about it from the college level, where you have essentially an influx of people into the sector from maybe a variety of different countries or backgrounds or whatever. And the colleges aren't prepared to train them on operational side of childcare, on, like you said, maybe some cultural differences that are coming in. I mean, there's a huge gap in, I think, where our education is for childcare versus the reality of childcare. And again, when you're pushing money to people through government funding to open up centers and incentivize them for creating spaces, you're not supporting them in operating those spaces and ensuring that the environment is set up properly and that children are well cared for. I mean, you're just throwing money into a problem and there's no solution. And it's going to be, we're just chasing the problem across the province right now.
Yeah, it's very telling. It's very telling when you say that in all the meetings that you were in, nobody mentioned the children. That's so
Nobody
telling.
mentions the children. Nobody. I mean, look, it's horrible. Look at those large associations too, right? Like, you look at your large associations that are lobbying on social media, they're mentioning unions more than they mention children. And it's gross. It's a gross narrative. This is what happens when you just start pouring money into an industry without, I would say, meeting stakeholders where they're at, and talking to parents, talking to educators, talking to people who actually work in childcare, not someone who's sitting on an executive board, worked for the key union for 30 years or whatever. I mean, anyway, I have some strong feelings about that, as you can tell.
Oh, 100%. We all work with the kids. We all are here for their best interests, right? Like, it's the kids that we're worried about and that we're concerned about with all these changes going on. And to hear that in all these meetings, nobody brings up the kids, it's heartbreaking. All these people are misleading. I feel like they're misleading the parents. They will say, especially politicians and like the business owners, they will say that we want to give the best quality of care. We're trying to help parents. We're trying to help families. But then when you're actually meeting about it, you're not even mentioning the kids. No. All you care about is money at that point.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's always about money. Like, a lot of people, I think, come into the industry right now. I mean, outside of my preschool, I have a consulting company for childcare, and I help people, open and help with the operational side and grants and things. And I will say there's a lot of people that come maybe a day home in the last year that want to use the government funding through space creation and open a center. And I think that's great if that's where you're wanting to go. But running a center in your house with maybe 6 children and operating a commercial center with 100 children and 20 staff is totally different level of expertise involved in that. And there is no one to bridge that for you, right? Like, you go, you can get a license, you're going to get funding, you're going to open, but who's going to train you on how to manage a team of 20 people? And how to deal with navigating, 100 children through your center in a day. Like, there's no education for that in our system, but yet we're pushing money to that, right? Like, government is funding that. That is the goal of this program, is to get as many of these centers open as fast as we can, because they signed a contract that requires them to create 68,000 spaces by March 31st, 2026. But there's no plan on how you're supporting all of those new spaces. I have calls from people who call me and they will say, I'm a director in a center and I have a non-compliance for, something like active supervision or medication or whatever it is. And my licensing officer is requiring us to do training to resolve the non-compliance, like the remedy to order. Like, that's great. I'm glad that they're requiring you to do training. And they're like, but where do we get the training? We ask them and they don't know. Oh, no. Like, come on. Like, how, like, I just have, like, when I get those kind of calls, and I think that's been something through the political side of this that I have just, as someone who's an entrepreneur and you are always pivoting and having to like think on your feet. If you're working in childcare, that's your day, right? Like you can plan it out as well as you want, but one child's going to have a bad day and you're there to support them, and then your whole plan goes out the window. But I can
100%.
like frustration I find in dealing with people who are creating these programs. They don't even come into your center to like watch what it would look like with the program implemented, or you come to someone who's obviously struggling to meet the regulatory requirements of childcare, and you say you need to go get trained on this so you can do better and make sure these children are safe, but you don't have a training program in place for them to follow. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, it's almost like it's false guidance, right? Like
it's all an illusion, right? Like,
yeah,
it's just, yeah. There's no engagement with the sector, and that's, I think, why we're at where we're at.
yeah. And I feel like on the other side of that too, there's, like you say, how it's hard for someone that's run a day home to understand how it works to run a daycare, which I totally agree with. I also think we're seeing all these business people that come in and decide a daycare would be a great business plan. So they open a daycare.
Yeah.
Well, they've got the business understanding, but they have no clue when it comes to the daycare side. So there should be some
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's got to be a balance there. There's got to be a way to figure out how maybe get those two people to work together so that the center has the understanding of the childcare and the understanding of the business.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, it has to be like a well-supported program all the way around from all angles, right? But I mean, again, you have people creating programs and policies on different levels of government that have never worked in childcare. So it's really easy to make this sound great on paper, but no one has been in a center other than maybe for photo op to support this program to actually ask people who are working there, how is this working? Is it working? Like, all these kind of conversations, I think, are so important, just whether we all agree or not, just to share perspectives on what we're seeing. But I find that there's a lot of pushback, and I've experienced this firsthand for 3 years, that you start to ask questions about this and suddenly, you're against this, or you're taking away affordable childcare and you don't want it. It's not at all what I'm saying. I 100% think parents should have affordable childcare. But we can't just say, here's affordable child for everyone, and it's just going to suddenly appear.
Exactly.
Quality is just as important as affordability, in my opinion. So I think we're playing a really dangerous game here with our childcare system. And again, like I said, the children are not okay in the system. We're going to be cleaning this up for a long time. And I'm really worried about children in childcare over the next couple of years.
Yeah, 100%.
I know you kind of touched base on this, but just to kind of like clarify it, who does the ACE support and advocate for?
We support all forms of licensed childcare. So we like to kind of present ACE as an association of operators for operators. So all of our board members are active childcare operators. We all either operate our own centers. We are here to represent care operators. Not that we, or ECEs in general, but we have felt that there's a lot of other associations that kind of focus on the ECE side of things of the sector, and we really wanted to support the other half, which is the operators. So yeah, all licensed forms of childcare.
Which is amazing.
So your website also states, we are advocating for equitable and sustainable solutions at the provincial level, such as the funding follows the family approach. This model respects both parental and operator's choice, allowing funding to move with families to their chosen childcare center, whether private, nonprofit, or home-based, reducing fees and minimizing unnecessary bureaucratic administrative costs, red tape, and government overreach. Now, as private day home providers, see many people and companies claim that they're advocating for us. However, when they say private, they're actually talking about the for-profit daycare centers. Or like our government, they will say private providers, but they actually mean day homes with an agency. So we just wanted to clarify your definition of private.
So we use the word private. It was usually meant, like you mentioned, like for profit. So like my center is a preschool. We're private preschool. We're for profit model. That's how we have tried to focus on licensed, regulated operators versus, I don't know if you mean like a private day home where you're not under an agency and you're like running it.
Exactly.
You're not technically not licensed yet, right? Yeah, we've only kind of focused on licensed programs, and it's not at all because we believe that there isn't a space in childcare for all different forms. I mean, personally, I would love for families to have access to funding to support whatever kind of care their child needs. So if a nanny is what is going to work for you, or you need a part-time preschool program, or your community has private day homes and that's what you choose for your child, I believe that's your choice as a parent. I don't think there's anything wrong with those care models. Being in Fort McMurray, day homes were what we relied on as parents for care for the majority of our children. My son went to a wonderful day home up the street from us for years. I think there's lots of space for all of us. I do not believe in a one size fits all of any kind in this system. So it was just a little difficult for us from an advocate when you're lobbying government for change to have things that are outside of regulatory kind of bodies. It was difficult advocacy standpoint, which is I think why we haven't kind of grown past the license part, if that answers that.
Yep. Yeah, just wanted to clarify. A lot of times being a private day home, it kind of, the titles or the names or references that different parts of government or different organization use, it gets confusing for parents and for some of the providers. So I just wanted that clarification.
Super confusing. And from province to province, it means something totally different too. So
yeah, exactly.
So how do you advocate for childcare providers?
We've done a lot of different things. Like, I think it depends on where we're at politically. Like, in Alberta, we just have a brand new agreement starting Tuesday here. We've been advocating for changes in our agreement since day one, I guess. We've done different things. I mean, we have letter writing campaigns. We have parent webinar nights. We've done closures of childcare across the province to make kind of some statements around the funding of centers and kind of the sustainability of the model that we were in at that time. We've held protests in Ottawa. We did walkouts across Ontario for when their agreement was coming in last year. So we've done a lot of different things. I think the biggest, kind of most consistent thing we try to do is just to bring a voice for the sector that maybe isn't always there or hasn't always been there, and try to grow that voice. So, day homes are fairly new for us. Our 5 board members are different types of childcare operators, but not day homes. So we've really been working with different day home members that are willing to share and try and kind of build knowledge base into ACE so we can advocate for day homes as well, because you guys are carrying a huge portion of spaces across the country and across Alberta, and parents rely on you too, and you need to have a voice in this as much as any of us. So I think we're open to whatever is needed at the time. This week we have, on Tuesday night, the 1st, we're having a parents webinar to go through. A lot of our members are facing some difficult questions from parents around supplementary fees, around $15 a day flat model, and all of the changes that are coming. And we wanted to make sure that we supported them and were able to answer questions directly from parents to maybe help operators. I have such an issue sometimes with government rolling out these changes and then putting it onto the operators to be the front line of those changes to parents. The amount of stress and anxiety that causes for people, and time. I mean, you're running a center, you're running a day home. You don't have time to be standing at the door debating policy with your families because they've been sold something in a headline that isn't quite true of what the actual agreement's going to be or the changes. It's such an unfair kind of passing of the buck, I think, from our government. So we do try to support our members as much as we can with those kind of things. And we're having a parents' night on Tuesday night. If you guys want to attend or share it, I can send the link to you. But
Yeah, absolutely. I've always thought it was interesting when the government says, here's our new policy, and then just leaves it at that. I always felt like if they truly supported that policy, they would be the ones explaining to everybody what it is, why it works, what's all the procedures, all of the details about it. But because they just kind of pass the buck off to the providers, I always think, how much are you actually invested in this program then, if you're not willing to stand up and explain it to everybody yourself?
Exactly. And, something we've been saying as a board to our membership a lot lately since this new agreement came out, which cut the subsidy for low-income families, is that as operators, as the front line of this program and as of childcare, we need to stop apologizing for this program. Because I don't know how you guys feel, but I spend a lot of time saying I'm really sorry to my parents that I have to do this because of this. Or I'm really sorry that, the government isn't paying me on time. It's 45 days late and I can't, afford to do this or, having to delay payments on things or whatever. Like I'm tired of apologizing for this. This isn't my program. Actually didn't even ask me before you implemented this program or developed it. I think we need to take some control back of our businesses, of our centers, of our profession, and say, like, we don't have any control over this. We're doing the best we can to navigate this, but here's your MLA's contact information. Here's Minister Jones' contact information. This is their program. Call them. I'm required to do this because I'm licensed or I'm wanting to offer this program to you so you can get $15 a day and my staff can get wage top-ups and everything else that comes with it. If I don't comply to these rules with this program, I can't offer that to you. And it requires me to do this, but it's not my program. This is not my center. I'm not the face of this because I think we have as a sector taken a lot of responsibility for this program. We haven't been active participants in creating it. I mean, there's other affordable measures, social programs that have rolled out, like dental care. I went to the dentist with my children last week. They didn't apologize to me about a horrible program that was rolling out. I mean, I doubt dentists would have to be on the front line of explaining to their clients why their benefits card didn't go through or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's just such
it's funny because we're being private providers. We actually, or I know it myself personally, I have parents come in and they say, oh, thank goodness we don't have to deal with any of that. We're so glad that you're not. And I actually have parents that have left day homes that are with agencies because it was a nightmare, because they didn't want to deal with all that. They say, at least being with a private provider, they know what the bill is every month. They just pay it. There's nothing else to worry about. They don't have to worry about what's going to be changed this month or next month or whatever. So I couldn't imagine having parents coming to me and saying, why is this happening? And having to apologize to them all the time. And I think that just sounds terrible.
Yeah, I think, a lot of us, so up until last January, I think it was, so not this agreement for April 1st, but the last one we just signed, up until that, we were able to technically access subsidy and wage top-ups outside of the affordability grant program. So if as a center you somehow didn't sign into the affordability grant or $10 a day program, you could still get those two other provincial programs in your center. And then what happened is, before signing into the last agreement, a lot of us were questioning why we were doing this. Like, why are we putting ourselves and our centers and our families through this like bureaucratic nightmare for this program? Like, maybe we'll just opt out, keep the wage top up, keep the subsidy for the low-income families and move forward. And suddenly they shifted it, and now it's an all or nothing. So if you don't participate in it, you can't have access to those things, which have kept, I think, a lot of people in this program who would have left. Like I am one. I would have bowed out, but it's really hard to compete for staff when you don't have wage top-ups.
Exactly.
And all the incentives, right, that come with that. So, yeah, I mean, it's an illusion of choice. This program.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you and ACE have direct access to those working for the Ministry of Jobs, Economy and Trade?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have direct access to them. We also have, built up really good relationships federally with different, with like the child care critic, Michelle Ferrari, she is a conservative MP, but definitely been an advocate of ours and supporting choice in child care. So yeah, we've built up a lot of different, I would say, relationships with different government bodies, but also different associations. I had a meeting 2 weeks ago with the Australian Childcare Association. They reached out to us. Yeah, it was really interesting. I didn't know anything about Australia's childcare policy until that night, but their government runs very similar to Canada's, and they're going to a federal election in May. And their association has been around for like 50 years, so very well established, very well resourced, and very informed on policy. And suddenly $10 a day childcare is hitting the narrative there. And they're using, one of their parties is using Canada as an example of success.
Oh,
so
no.
When they put it, yeah, I know. When they put it into, Google to find out a bit more about Canada, our association popped up, and it was different from what they were being told in their campaigning there. So it's a really interesting conversation. And yeah, definitely. Even the United States, there's a large childcare association. They have like 90,000 members across the United States that we partner with. ACE has a partnership with them. That the same idea, like, they don't want $10 a day childcare there. They don't want to see this model, but yet it's being kind of Canada's like the poster child for how successful it is. Just terrifying to me, but
right. Of all the things to be misinformed on, let's not encourage every other country to get this program at all.
No. I'll always just like talk to an operator, like just go Google like a daycare in Canada and call them and ask them how it's working. Ask them if they would sign into this again if they had a choice,
That's the unfortunate thing, the government is the ones that have the loudest voices, and it's not always an accurate description that their people are getting. They're the ones saying, this is great, this program is working, it's amazing, it benefits everybody. But everybody that works behind the scenes are like, no, this is a terrible idea. This doesn't work. It doesn't help anybody, except maybe some parents. But even the parents that it is helping are not the parents that needed the help. So it really is not benefiting anybody that it should be benefiting at all.
No, I mean, there's so many flaws in it, but there's also so much research in 3 years behind showing that it isn't doing what it promised to do. Yet we continually see this narrative that we have to stick with it. We have to give it more time. It's going to work. It's going to work. Well, I mean, there was open letters from associations to those premiers attacking them, making sure they signed, making sure parents were rallying to ensure these provinces signed in, but they're not asking, like, is this enough funding? You're throwing a number on it, but do you understand that how much that costs? Like, how much quality childcare actually costs? Is this the right number? Are we signing an extension without understanding, like, you haven't met with your stakeholders in childcare in your province? Why are you signing a contract without talking to parents who you're essentially signing them into this contract for 5 years? Like, I just think it's such, I don't know, there's just been such mismanagement of this whole sector with these agreements. And again, to repeat that mistake to me seems ridiculous. Like, I can't imagine signing a lease for my center if for the last 5 years, the roof had been leaking and, there'd been issues with parking and all these things, and just being like, yeah, sure, I'll sign another 5-year lease. Like, even knowing that those things are all happening, right?
Exactly.
It seems so, yeah, so horrible. But, I think, I don't know if you guys see this so much in your centers with day homes, but one thing we've been talking a lot about is when you put a price tag on a service like childcare, and you call it $10 a day childcare just nationally, you totally devalue the services that we provide. Like
100%.
I've been doing this now, I think 11 years, and I feel like we were finally getting to a point where we weren't necessarily seen as babysitters anymore, right? Like, there was a value to what we were offering, and then ta-da, this $10 a day program rolls out, and suddenly you're like, wait a minute, like, what I'm providing costs way more than $10 a day, and the value on it is way higher than that. It's really, I feel like right now, when we're trying to navigate maybe away from this program or trying to change it, it's really hard to get away from this with parents, because we have put a price tag on it that is so unrealistic. I don't know how we're going to get rid of that without looking like we're gouging or we're being unfair or we're overcharging, because they've been sold this $10 a day ticket, but it's not at all realistic. And I feel like we're so far, we've slid now so far backwards. We've also joked about this as a board, that people pay more to have their pets in dog daycare. For the day, like, don't question it. Yet, if you are a childcare operator right now who's charging, like, now you're in the new program for April and you have to charge $100 for food, there's a huge pushback from some families and things, because they're like, well, why am I paying this?
Yeah.
Paying $100 a month for 2 meals and 2 snacks for my child. Like, I don't know if you guys have been grocery shopping lately, but that it's not unreasonable. So I feel like the government has done us such a disservice for the value of our services that we provide in our profession.
And it's created such a sense of entitlement in parents. If you're going to charge the extra for food, then I'm just going to go somewhere else that won't. And they're forgetting about the things that matter, which again is their kids. It's not I understand that there's some parents that truly cannot afford that extra, but that's what the initial subsidy program that the government had, that's what subsidy was for, not this one size fits all. And so everybody, pays the same amount. That's not helpful to the people that need it. But the sense of entitlement from parents that has been created with this program, it's definitely affecting, like you said, the provider's value. Parents don't seem to see that the same anymore.
No, they've cheapened it, right? Like, you're only worth $10 a day. And most people will spend that more than that on a coffee on the way to dropping their child off at your center than they will, so it's really hard. I think we're going to have to do a lot as a sector to professionalize ourselves, to really recreate the value in that. But I do think that this is going to lead to a 2-tiered kind of childcare system, where you're going to see kind of that baseline core $10 a day, $15 a day childcare, and you'll get this for that. Or you're going to see more of a school system model, I guess, where there is that public option, but there's also private option or charter school or different tiers almost, right? Where people that have a child that maybe needs extra enhancements or more support are going to see that they'll have to pay more for that, because it's not covered in a core model. There's not staffing in that budget for that, unfortunately. So then again, we could talk about how this one size fits all funding model has pushed the children that are the most vulnerable, the high needs children, to the bottom of the line, and they're being bounced from center to center because people are burned out. We don't have the extra staff. The programs that are in place for the, inclusive programs and things that are government funded are not catching up to the demand coming out of COVID and everything else that's going on in our educators flooding the system aren't trained necessarily on how to deal with these kind of situations and challenges in running a center or a day home. So it's like this, loop that we're in, and those children are falling to the wayside. It's going to get harder and harder.
Yeah. What type of responses do you receive from the government when you advocate?
Mixed, I would say. It depends on what we're doing. It all depends. I've received very positive responses, and I've received a lot of pushback on being questioned. To be honest, I don't care what the response of the government is, whether it's positive or negative, as long as they're listening to what we're saying and at least considering it. And, I have gotten a thicker skin over the last 3 years. I used to take things very personally that, seeing your name in a social media post and someone attacking you was hard to swallow the first few years here, but I'm getting tougher with this. I feel like the response from operators and from the sector has been increasingly positive. And I can't tell you how many times, we just hosted a conference in Calgary for childcare operators last weekend, having people come up to you and say, thank you so much. I feel like I had somebody else I could talk to about this. I wasn't by myself in this. And, I'm on the group chat and people are helping, and we're sharing resources, and being able to bring that to reality for so many people matters way more than whether, ex-minister is happy because I'm nagging at them for doing a shitty job at what they're supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah. Does ACE receive funding from the government?
No, we are probably the only childcare association that isn't getting transfer payments or funding for things to promote certain sides of this. No, we don't. And we have no plans to receive funding. I will say, just something that was confusing to me because I was never part of the political world until this. When we started, we had to register as lobbyists, our board, because if you meet with government for more than, I think it's 50 hours a year or something like that, each province has different rules. You have to be registered as a lobbyist, or your business, like my center, could be fined hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we registered as lobbyists, and part of the lobbying registration in Alberta, it requires you to put whatever government funding you get. So I had to list, my center is government funded. I receive affordability grants for my families, right? So I would have to put that on there. And I cannot even tell you how many times I've had somebody who's ill-informed on how this works on social media say, I've received $250,000 in government funding last year. It's not government funding the same way that other people may get government funding to promote a certain narrative. I have an active childcare center. I do receive affordability grants, and I had to disclose it on there, right? So, it's just been a whole learning experience of what, how this all works behind the scenes. But no, we don't get any actual government funding. We're all volunteers, all have our own centers and our own businesses.
Right. I actually find that refreshing. I think when an agency or an organization is funded by the government, but then they advocate for other people, I find that blurs some lines a little. I think that's the better route to go for sure.
Yeah. It's a huge conflict of interest, I think. Yeah. If you're getting paid by a Liberal government and you're advocating for a program that is under that government, how can you actually represent your members in a fair way when you've been paid to support that program?
Exactly.
You can't. Your funding stops. And when your funding stops, how are you affording all the salaries you're paying for the people that sit on your board?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think there's some discrepancies sometimes with these organizations that say we are advocating for the providers and for the centers, and then all of a sudden they're also being funded by the government. I think it's definitely shady, I guess. Right? It doesn't give you confidence in them for what that they're actually advocating for the right things. And how hard are they advocating?
Exactly.
if you're being funded by the government and you're saying, hey, the providers are not happy, this is not working for them, the government's giving you your paycheck. So
Yeah.
when the government says, sorry, that's just the way it is, do you go above and beyond that, or do you say, okay, no problem, because you're giving me my paycheck, right?
Yeah.
So it,
Exactly.
yeah.
You know what,
Yeah,
one thing too, I hadn't thought about till it was early on in this is we would often be faced with, well, the nonprofits are so happy about this. You don't hear the YMCA saying anything negative about this program publicly, those kind of things. And then when we started to build these relationships in the sector where we would have, direct contacts or sitting in meetings with people that were maybe representing a large nonprofit, you quickly realize that they can't bite the hand that feeds. Those centers are government funded centers. They're not allowed to stand in the media and say something negative against the government that is funding them. So, it really gives this skewed perception that everyone's happy about it. Just because people are quiet doesn't mean they're happy.
exactly.
It just means, like you said, like you're stuck, you're shackled because you took the money, right?
What are different types of memberships that ACE offers, and what are the benefits of those memberships?
So we have, I'm actually going to have to pull it up because I know we've just recently changed things. So we do offer benefits for daycare operators, both nonprofit, for-profit, as well as we do day home memberships now. We did do a national membership on different tiers to start off. We offered a $25 national membership. And then as provincial chapters are forming in each of the different provinces, once they have a chapter, then that actually goes to a full membership because then there's different benefits to it. So yeah, we offer, I think we're trying to cover everybody if we can properly represent them. So like I said, with day homes, it's a new membership. I think it's $100. And that gets you access to CFIB membership, gets you access into the different communities, webinars, resources that we put on. But we're not able to offer the health benefits, like the comprehensive extended benefits, because day homes are kind of seen as self-employed. It's a little tricky, but we're open if someone came forward and said there's this need or we need support from ACE, then we will absolutely try and build a benefits package and membership for you. But yeah, that's where we are right now. So we do try to represent, the sector as much as we can. So
just to clarify then, you said that you have a membership for day homes. Would the day home provider need to be with an agency? I know it's a tricky one, sorry.
I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say. Yeah, I mean,
it's fine.
I was going to say, would we look to screen that? Probably not, but when we advocate publicly or when we're advocating with government, we do say regulated childcare because the unregulated childcare, at least from a government standpoint, has been very difficult for us to get any kind of support. They just won't put money into unregulated system.
Right.
So, I mean, would we offer that person who signed up for a membership as a day home everything that is included in that? Absolutely. But I would just want to be fully transparent that when we're advocating, the language that we're using is around regulated childcare.
Right.
So.
No, fair enough. We just wanted to make sure. We have a lot of private providers that listen, so we just wanted to make sure we're clear on everything.
Yeah, I just would never want to misrepresent. I've been someone who held membership with associations that I thought were working to support me, and when you're paying for something and they're actively working against you, it's not a great feeling. So,
Right.
Yeah, I want to be fully transparent that.
For sure. Thank you.
No problem. Could we partner with you as well? If you had just throwing this out there, ACE had tons of different partnerships with other associations, like I said, Australia, United States. If there was an unlicensed or unregulated day home association of operators that wanted to, have support from ACE or work on something, absolutely, we would look at that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today, Crystal.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so that's it for Day Home Divas this week.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Day Home Divas, on TikTok at dayhome.divas, and join our Facebook group, Day Home Divas.
Hope you join us again next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's it. Thanks again so much. We really appreciate you coming and talking to us.
Anytime. I'm super happy to talk about childcare anytime you have questions. Do you want me to send you a link to the Tuesday parents event?
Yeah.
You sit in just to listen or anything? I can share it with you if you wanted to.
Yeah, that
Sure,
would be
you
great.
can.
Okay. And if you know tough conversations with parents, you can send it to them too. Whoever you want.
Perfect.
More parents is always better. So
Perfect. We can put it on all our socials and share it on there as well if you'd like.
okay. Sure,
Great.
I will send it out to you guys and you can just put it where you want. Thank you so much. I hope you have a good rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. You too. Bye. Okay.
Did
well, that went well.
you read Sophia's message though? She wanted to read
No.
some.
Oh shit! I'm sorry. I had my messages turned off, or like my notifications turned off because I kept hearing, like on the other ones, I kept hearing my phone vibrate or it bing. So I'm like, oh, I'll just turn it off.
Okay, so do you hear mine ping? Because I have mine on
No.
silent and mine pings.
No, I wasn't hearing anyone else's. I think it's because mine is on the desk and so it vibrates. So I think my microphone was picking it up. So that's
Well, because I have mine on vibrate, but then it pops up in the corner of my computer, so it dings, and I was like, damn, how do I turn that thing off?
Oh no. No, I haven't been hearing that. Oh, I feel so bad now that I didn't catch that message. Shit. Okay, we're gonna have to just learn to like speak up and interrupt maybe more because I don't know how else to set it up so that I'm not hearing.
Or we can do it where every other question is one person. So like if you did the first one, then I could do the second, then she can do the third. Then you don't have
absolutely, yeah.
Then you don't have to put it all the time in. We could just pick the order we're going in at the beginning.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And then we don't miss anyone.
For sure.
That's why I was like, you could have told me. I would have given you some of mine.
Right? Oh, I feel so bad. Crap, I'm sorry. I'll message her and let her know, or like I'll add to this message and apologize to her. I did not mean to like cut her out or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe we could just do that at the beginning every time. We'll just decide what order we want to go in and then go from there. And then at least everyone knows their
and I don't know
things,
what's going
and
on.
You don't always have to put it in. You a little bit. Alrighty.
All right. Okay. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll send a message to Sophia. Actually, I'll probably just put it on the podcast post.
Yeah, no worries.
All right.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.